All of the NBA Finals matchups next month will be on at Walters Sports Bar in the Navy Yard District. Walters is open late, so no closing before the end of the game.
Everyone is talking about magnesium. It's all you hear about. But why? What do we know about magnesium? Well, magnesium is the number one mineral that 75% of Americans are deficient in. If you are a woman over 35, magnesium will help you rediscover balance, energy, and vitality. Magnesium supports more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those involved in hormonal balance. From functional medicine doctors to mental well-being and female hormone experts, we all know that magnesium is the one mineral to improve all aspects of well-being and health. But which one? Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, the trusted choice recommended by leading experts with 7 best-absorbed forms of magnesium to ensure your body receives the support it needs for overall well-being. Go to bioptimizers.com/balance today and use code BALANCE10 for 10% off. Support your journey to wellness at bioptimizers.com/balance. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, your foundation to optimal health and vitality.
And now the right-hander's ready. Schwellenbach with a pitch. Thomas swings and hits it in the air to deep left field. This is way back. Going, and gone. Goodbye. Off the back wall of the Nationals bullpen in straightaway left field. Bang! Zoom goes Lane Thomas with a 3-run home run, his 3rd of the year. The Nationals take the lead here in the top half of the 5th inning. It's Washington 3 and Atlanta 1.
2 balls, 2 strikes. The pitch to Ozuna. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. A changeup. That's 10 strikeouts for MacKenzie Gore. 2nd time this season. 6th career double-figure strikeout game for MacKenzie Gore.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Thursday, May 30th, 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We now are exactly a third of the way into the Nationals' 2024 regular season. 54 games down, 108 games to go, and the Nats, a third of the way into their 2024 regular season, are 25-29, on pace for a 75-win regular season, what would be the team's best since the 2019 World Series championship season. Wednesday night, a terrific Nats win, a 7-2 win at the Atlanta Braves in Game 3 of a 4-game series in which the Nats have won 2 of the first 3 games. Coming up later in the show, very significant news for Washington, D.C. baseball. But we on Wednesday night had this win by the Nats, one of the more complete wins by the Nats this season. MacKenzie Gore was tremendous. The Nats bullpen was great. The Nats offense was very good. Mark, there was a good bit to like from this game.
There was a whole lot to like from this game, Al, but let me start with, you said 25 wins right now at the 1/3 mark of the season, putting them on pace for how many? 75 on the season? Who predicted 76 wins for this season? Oh, that would be me. That would be me. Now, here's the thing. At this moment, I almost feel more confident about your prediction of 82 than mine of 76, because I also felt like going into the season that things should progressively get better, and that maybe in the second half of the year, once some of the kids are playing for them, that this could be a better team, and they'd be a better team in the second half than in the first half. So if this is what they are a third of the way in, given who they've had, given the injuries they've had, I'm pretty encouraged by this, and I think a lot of people should be encouraged by it. And the other thing I'm encouraged by, we've seen it here the last couple of weeks. I know they haven't played a lot of division games yet, but they have played the Phillies and now the Braves. They have more than held their own against those teams. I know they lost to the Phillies, but those are some tough games that they lost. And in this series, they have absolutely played well against the Braves. I understand the Braves are dealing with their own set of issues right now. They're maybe not as good as everybody thought they might be. In the bigger picture, think about how bad these guys were against the division in recent years and how large that gap felt like for them versus pretty much everybody else in the division. And right now, early on, they've played the top 2 teams in the division very competitively. And to me, that is one of the most encouraging signs we've seen in a while.
Very much so. And the Braves, yes, are not at their best right now, but the Braves still have one of the best records in the National League this season. I mean, it's not like the Braves are off to some wretched start or anything like that. And so far, the Nats have done quite well in this series. Clearly, the best aspect of the Nats so far this season has been the team starting pitching. We talk about the Nats overall being on a 75-win pace. The starting pitching is on about a 95-win pace with how good it has been. And you now can make the case that the Nats' best starting pitcher this season has been MacKenzie Gore. Now, how you want to define who the best starting pitcher is can vary. We can quibble with that. But MacKenzie Gore on Wednesday night was great, and MacKenzie Gore this season is being great. He officially allowed 2 runs, 1 earned in 5 1/3 innings. So if you want to say, all right, just 5 1/3 innings, fine. But 10 strikeouts versus no walks. He was dominant in this game. 10 Ks, no BBs. He gave up 6 hits, which were 2 doubles and 4 singles. He threw a lot of strikes, 97 pitches, 63 strikes. 34 balls. The unearned run that Gore allowed came in the bottom of the third off a 1-out fielding error by shortstop C.J. Abrams, who was like the only Nat who did not have a good night, 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts and the error. But MacKenzie Gore now in this regular season, 11 starts, an ERA of 2.91, a whip of 1.28, a strikeouts per 9 innings of 11.05. Mark, he is pitching like an ace.
He 100% is, and what we've seen this year so far is that when he's on, he is pitching as well as anybody in the league, and even when he's off, he's pitching all right. And that was the big thing that I think we felt like we needed to see from him this year versus last year. Don't let the bad starts get out of control, and he's done a really good job of that, and now more consistently seeing the good version of him, and this was about as good of a version of him as you're ever going to see. I know you didn't get through the 6th, 5 1/3. That Abrams error cost him a bunch of pitches. If Abrams turns that double play, I think we're talking about Gore at least completing the 6th and maybe having a chance at coming back for the 7th. But the stat that matters to me from this game, it's 10 strikeouts, no walks. You don't do that without being really good. It would be hard to give up a lot of runs and still have 10 strikeouts and 0 walks. And so I had to look it up, how many guys have done this in Nationals history? Gore is the 11th pitcher in Nationals history with a 10 strikeout, 0 walk game. Most of them only did it once or twice. You have the one-timers, John Lannon, Gio Gonzalez, Tanner Roark, Patrick Corbin, and Josiah Gray did it last year. 3 guys did it twice, Jordan Zimmerman, Joe Ross, and John Patterson back in 2005. People forget how good Patterson was that year. And then there are the 2 at the top of the list, and they're the names that you would expect to be there. Steven Strasburg with 10 of them in his career, and Max Scherzer, as a National, had 10 strikeouts and no walks 20 times. It is just astounding to think about that, how dominant he was and how consistently dominant he was. Now, this is the first for MacKenzie Gore. You would like to believe there are more coming. All he has to do is do this twice more, and it's the 3rd highest total in Nationals history. We've talked about there's something about him that reminds you of Scherzer and Strasburg in terms of they have not had somebody with MacKenzie Gore combination of stuff and mound presence and everything else that goes with it, I think, since those 2. He's got a long way to go to catch them, obviously. But we are seeing more and more signs of him having the ability to be the kind of pitcher that those guys were. And this start against that lineup is one of the best examples I think we've seen yet.
Well, and he really is one of the few Nats pitchers who can do 10 strikeouts versus no walks. And that's not to say that other Nats starters this season haven't had games in which they've had a lot of strikeouts and few walks. But if you go by strikeouts per 9 innings, I mentioned Gore at 11.05. No other Nats starting pitcher who has pitched a decent amount this season has a strikeouts per 9 innings above 8. So, Gore is in a territory that neither Jake Irvin, nor Mitchell Parker, nor Trevor Williams, certainly nor Patrick Corbin is in, not even Josiah Gray. There is an upside with Gore, we've talked about this, that is immense. And so you get really excited when he pitches like this because you feel like you're seeing that upside be delivered upon. As good as Trevor Williams has been this season, there is this overarching feeling of he's Trevor Williams, he's a veteran, he'll probably come back down to earth. Even if he does end up having a really good season, no one feels like he's an ace in the making. With Gore, there's this feeling of he's an ace in the making. You're seeing something that we saw with Max Scherzer and we saw with Steven Strasburg. And so it's so good to see. And Not to jinx anything, but I will say this, and I will give the Nats a lot of credit for this. They are keeping their starting pitchers healthy. I know Josiah Gray has been out for a while, but we remember MacKenzie Gore, when the Nats acquired him 2 years ago, there were injury concerns, injury issues. He has been kept healthy. He makes his starts, and he has been very effective, and he's having a really nice season. I feel like every other show we talk about potential all-star candidates for the Nats. MacKenzie Gore at this point, you have to say, is an all-star candidate, right?
If you have a sub-3 RA and more than a strikeout per inning, then yeah, you need to be in that conversation. And nothing against Trevor Williams, like you just said. But which one of those two guys feels like an all-star to you, and somebody who wouldn't just be a token pick, but somebody who might be making it for the first of several times in his career? It would be great to see him continue this and get that kind of honor. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing about them staying healthy. I was thinking about this the other day as well. We know they used only 8 starting pitchers all of last season, and that was a very low total for them or for any team. Well, they came into this season with the same 5 to start the year. Josiah Gray goes down, Mitchell Parker replaced them, and that's all they've used. So that's now 9 starting pitchers in a season and a third. That is really hard to do, really impressive. You knock on wood, of course, but I hear from people with the Nationals a lot of credit being given to their training staff. We don't talk about this a lot. I have heard this from them, saying they truly believe that training staff has done a great job of maintaining health, getting guys back quickly. Lane Thomas to come back as quickly as he did from his MCL, I didn't think it would be that soon. I think a lot of people didn't think it would be that soon. We may need to start talking more about the training staff and the job they've done in keeping guys healthy and getting guys back quickly when they do suffer an injury.
Would be great if the Nats now have a competitive advantage in that department, because for years it felt like the Nats maybe didn't, but if they do, that's awesome. Hey guys, Al Galdi here to tell you about the latest offer from Window Nation for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. The time has come. The time for Window Nation's semi-annual sale. 50% off all window styles plus 0% interest for 5 years, and an additional bonus if you schedule an appointment this week. This runs through the end of the month. Many so-called wood or composite windows are actually made from waste materials like wood fibers and cannot beat the efficiency of Window Nation's insulated vinyl windows. Window Nation's vinyl windows can do everything that you need, and at a fraction of the cost of wood or composite windows. You see, nobody does windows like Window Nation does. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Again, that deal, the semi-annual Window Nation sale. 50% off all window styles plus 0% interest for 5 years, and an additional bonus if you schedule an appointment this week. 866-90NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for your shot to win up to 100 times your cash. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. And if you have the skills, you can play for a shot of turning your $10 into $1,000. And playoff time is the best time to join the Prize Picks community of over 5 million members who have already downloaded the app. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the app today and use the code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match of up to $100 when you download the app and use the code BLUEWIRE. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Here's your Dylan Cruz update for the game played on Wednesday. Cruz hit cleanup, played right field, 1 for 1 with a single. He also drew a walk and was hit by a pitch. It was just a 7-inning game, so that's why he was a bit short of plate appearances. Cruz hitting .264 on the season with an OPS of .783. Now back to the show.
Now Weems to the bell. And the pitch, swing and a drive in the air to deep right center field. Young moving to his left is there, crossing onto the warning track. He makes the catch at a Curly W's in the books here at Truist Park in Atlanta.
So MacKenzie Gore on Wednesday night, terrific, and so was the Nats bullpen. 4 Nats relievers combined for 3 2/3 scoreless innings. Each guy did a nice job. Dylan Floro came into the game, bottom of the 6th. Runners on second and third, 1 out. Nats up 5-1. Floro retired each of the 2 batters he faced via a ground out, the first of which was an RBI ground out. Robert Garcia, bottom of the 7th, faced 3 batters and got 2 outs. Hunter Harvey, excellent again, 1 1/3 scoreless innings with 3 swinging strikeouts. Once again, Davey Martinez threw Harvey into the fire. The 5 batters who Harvey faced were the Braves, numbers 1 through 5 batters. This guy never gets a break. He's constantly facing teams' best hitters, and for the most part, he's coming through. And then Jordan Weems tossed a perfect bottom of the 9th. I did wonder if we might have a Tanner Rainey sighting with the Nats up 7-2 in the 9th, but we did not. Jordan Weems got the call, but really good stuff from the Nats bullpen.
I think that's still not quite low leverage enough for Tanner Rainey territory, which tells you just how low leverage it needs to be. You know, I really liked the way that Davey managed this, and it was a little different than he has done it. When Gore gets in trouble in the 6th inning, we have seen often it'll be like a Derek Law that comes in, or Garcia if the matchup is right, just to try to get out of the inning and save the better guys for later. Instead, he went right to Dylan Floro in the 6th, the guy that we think of as a 7th or even 8th inning guy at times. And I think that was Davey saying, hang on, this is an important part in the game. It's still the middle of their lineup. Let's bring in the better reliever to get out of the 6th inning. Then he goes to Garcia in the 7th against the bottom of the order. And then, like you said, he had Hunter Harvey ready to go as soon as that lineup turned over again. And that was the right play. And we see him do this consistently. He's not their closer, but at times it feels like he is their highest leverage reliever. He's the guy you want against the other team's best hitters. So I really like the way they used him for that. And it's really nice to win a game and not have to use Kyle Finnegan. And this has happened a few times lately. That is a luxury they have not had very often. And it allows you now going into the series finale. We don't know how it's going to play out, but if they are in a position and it's a close game, you can pitch the top guys at the end of the game and not worried about overusage. And very often you get to the end of a series and we've felt like, oh, well, he's got to mix and match, or he's got to find some other guy to get through it. This worked out really about as well as you could have asked for from a bullpen standpoint.
And with Finnegan rested, Davey potentially could be aggressive with Finnegan and deploy him for, say, a 4-out save. I know Davey doesn't like to do that, but if the opportunity presents itself, I think it's at least a possibility with the way that the Nats have been able to finagle things here lately. The Nats offense, we know that it has not been good this season, but it on Wednesday night was good, really good. 7 runs, 13 hits, which were made up of a home run, 3 doubles, and 9 singles, 3 walks. And the Nats could have scored more than the 7 runs because the Nats went just 3 for 15 with runners in scoring position. But the Nats did go 5 for 6 on stolen bases. So the running game was back in effect. Although, yet another Nats runner did get picked off. This thing with guys getting picked off has got to stop. But still, really good night for the Nats offensively. 3 runs top of the 5th, 2 runs top of the 6th, 2 runs at top of the 9th. A big game for Lane Thomas. This was game number 3 in his return from the sprained left MCL. It was on Monday afternoon that the Nats announced having reinstated Thomas from the 10-day injured list, which he had been on since April 24th, and he on Wednesday night was a force. Thomas is the Nats starting right fielder and number 2 batter, 3 for 4 with a 3-run homer, a double, a single, and a walk. And he went 2 for 2 on stolen bases. Thomas in the top of the 3rd, a 2-out full count double off the left field warning track despite having been down to the count at 1.12. Thomas in the Nats 3-run 5th, a 1-out 3-run homer to left field for a 3-1 Nats lead. Thomas in the top of the 7th drew a 1-out walk, and Thomas in the Nats 2-run 9th, a 1-out single into right field on an 0-2 pitch, and he then had steals of 2nd and 3rd base. He has looked good over these first 3 games back from the injury.
He's looked really good, and, whatever concern there was of, are they bringing him back too soon? Did he need more time on the rehab assignment? No, he's hit the ground running, and literally, because to see him coming off the knee injury, be able to run the bases as well as he has, play defense as well as he has, that's been a great sight for them. And, we talked about this, that I know he got off to a rough start to the year offensively, but you just felt like the absence of him in the lineup was going to have a profound effect, and I think it did. And that meant that the return of Lane Thomas to the lineup was going to have a good positive effect, and it has absolutely had that. You don't have to rely on C.J. Abrams. When he has a bad night like he did, you've got a guy right behind him who can drive in those runs. So that was big. The defense, of course, is big, and it's allowing a domino effect here, which is you now have Jesse Winker, Eddie Rosario, and Joey Meneses, 3 guys for 2 spots. Or you can say 4 guys for 3 spots if you want to include Joey Gallo in that conversation. So one of them doesn't have to be in the lineup every day. You can pick the right matchups you want. It makes you a better defensive team to have whoever you decide is the better left fielder in there. And then in this case, you have Winker DHing on this night. So there's a real dramatic effect, I think, to Lane Thomas being back with them. And that homer was so needed because at that point, they are 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position, and it felt like this is going to be one of those nights where they keep giving themselves chances and they can't take advantage of it. And when he hit that homer, it was like, okay, everything's going to be fine now. They're good to go, and they had a really nice night at the plate after that.
Another good game for Keibert Ruiz. He is the Nats starting catcher and number 5 batter, 2 for 5 with a double and a 2-run single, and he had a stolen base. Keibert in the top of the 4th, a 1-out double off the brick wall in right center field, and Keibert in the Nats 2-run 9th, a 2-out 2-run single to center field for a 7-1 Nats lead, and he had a stolen base. A gutsy performance by Jacob Young. He is the Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, 1 for 3 with a 2-run single, which came after a frightening hit by pitch. Young in that Nats 3-run 5th drew a first pitch hit by pitch as he, while squaring to bunt, was struck by the baseball on the left side of his batting helmet in a really scary moment. I actually give him a lot of credit for turning his head just in the nick of time to where the ball, instead of hitting him right in the face, struck the left side of the helmet. He went down. He was face down. You didn't know what to think. You're thinking, is he knocked out? You're thinking potential concussion. He stayed in the game, and then he had a 2-run single. Jacob Young in the Nats 2-run 6, a 2-out opposite field, 2-run single to right field on a 1-2 pitch for a 5-1 Nats lead. So what a job by Jacob Young. I hate to bring this up, but I have to bring this up. He did get picked off. So this happened again with an Nats base runner and also got caught in an attempted steal of second base. So this now marks 4 times in 3 games in this series that a Nats player has gotten picked off. 6 times in 6 games that a Nats player has gotten picked off. But the real story with Jacob Young in this game: gets struck on the head, or at least side of the face, stays in the game, and then delivers a 2-run single.
When you're watching that live and you don't know where exactly it hit him, you can't help but assume the worst there. And it's such a scary sight. It's probably the worst thing that can happen on a baseball field. That and maybe a line drive back at the pitcher that gets him in the head. Those are the 2 things, because there is no time to react. And you're right. When you watch the replay, you can see how he just in the nick of time, he's pulling the bat back and turning his head just enough so that it catches that corner of the C-flap, they call it, that comes down beyond the ear and protects the cheek. If he's the tiniest fraction of a second later to react like that, I think it gets him at least on the temple, if not even in the eye. And God knows what would have happened if that had come to pass. So thankfully, he was all right. It took him a while just to kind of collect his thoughts. You kind of worried, okay, are there going to be signs of something as the game plays on, of concussion or headaches or anything? We'll see tomorrow. Maybe there's something after he sleeps overnight, but it was really good to see him come back just to play at all, let alone to play as well as he did. Scary stuff. It really is. And that little extra flap that guys now, a lot of them wear it. It does make a difference because it doesn't have to hit all the way down on the cheek. There's enough there that it just kind of creates enough of a barrier the ball can't get through. Because like I said, if you take that away in just a standard ear flap, it probably gets him in the temple square, and that could have been a nightmare scenario.
Great to see Young stay in the game. Apparently is fine. We'll see, and come through with that big hit. Eddie Rosario had himself a nice game. He is the Nats starting left fielder and number 6 batter, 2 for 5 with 2 singles on 1-2 pitches. He and the Nats 2-run 6 had a 1-out single to right field on a 1-2 pitch, and he in the top of the 8th had a leadoff single up the middle on a 1-2 pitch.
From grown-worthy dad jokes to patching up skinned knees, your dad is one of a kind. This Father's Day, give him a gift that is guaranteed to take him to his happy place. Omaha Steaks. Order mouth-watering gift packages starting at just $89 when you go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code NATSCHAT at checkout. Each package is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. Show your dad the love he deserves with a gift as unforgettable as he is. Visit omahasteaks.com, promo code NATSCHAT at checkout.
And a bunt up the third base line, off the hill as Lee falls down and then tries to throw from that prone position. And the throw off the mark, Olsen comes off the bag to catch it. The end result is Gallo's at first and a bunch of divots dug up on the infield grass by the spikes of a slipping, sliding Dylan Lee.
A man who had a rather interesting Wednesday, Joey Gallo. If you don't know of what I speak, go to TMZ Sports. This is a family-friendly podcast, so we will not engage in the smut that is out there regarding Joey Gallo. But let's just say that Joey Gallo and our own Tim Shovers have a few things in common right now. But Joey Gallo had a bunt single in this game on Wednesday night. Yeah, you heard that right. Bunt single, Joey Gallo. The guy who never gets singles actually had a bunt single. He is an starting first baseman and number 8 batter, 2 for 4 with a double and a bunt single. Gallo in the Nats 3-run fifth, leadoff double to the right field corner. Gallo top of the 8th, a 2-out first pitch bunt single. Now, put aside any potential anger you may have, I certainly have, of a guy in Gallo who's supposed to hit for power bunting. I think the entertainment value right there supersedes the sacrificing of power potential in that at-bat. To see Gallo bunt a first pitch bunt single with 2 outs in the top of the 8th, that's one of the highlights of the season, in my opinion.
Especially the way his season has gone. And you know what? Sometimes you need a moment of levity. You could see he was living it up, racing down the line and celebrating and doing the hip shake and everything in the dugout. I'm sure they all appreciated it as well. Sometimes for a guy who's struggling like that and you know that it's like eating away at him, just a little moment of fun like that can loosen you up, and who knows what it might mean down the road. I guess he's also got some other things going on in his life right now. I'll just say that I believe the Braves organist, who is known for playing some clever tunes when different guys step to the plate, I'm pretty sure when Gallo stepped up, he played Rockabye Baby. And we'll just let everyone interpret that, what they think that might mean.
Hey, few things in life are as genuine and as lasting as the relationship between the professional athlete and the social media influencer, okay? I'll just say that. Also in this game, the Nats did lose a player to injury. Nick Senzel, he is a Nats starting third baseman and number 7 batter, drew a walk, but then left the game due to what we believe is a hurting right knee. Top of the second, he drew an impressive walk, a 2-out 9-pitch walk despite having been down at 1.12. But he, during the plate appearance, fouled a ball off his right knee. And so what was interesting is he draws the walk, he's on first base for a little bit, and then he leaves the game. Normally, you draw the walk and then you leave the game because you're having a hard time getting to first, or you get to first and you realize you're ailing. In this case, he was on first base for multiple pitches after his plate appearance and then left the game. Kind of an odd scene.
Yeah, it was. And the way that it fouled off him was unusual, too. If you saw the replay, he didn't foul the ball straight off his knee. It looked like it hit the plate and then bounced back up and caught him on the knee. And maybe that's why it didn't necessarily, in the moment, feel as bad. The report post-game from Davey Martinez was that Senzel got to first, and as he started to lead off, he felt it lock up on him, and that got him concerned. And so they obviously took him out of the game. They took tests. They said everything was negative. The belief here is that everything's fine, that it's nothing serious. Again, with these things, let's see, you sleep on it for a night, it might be swollen up the next morning. So, no idea. But the initial thing seems to be that they avoided anything that major. But that was a weird one, just in the reaction to it and how long it took until he realized that something was wrong.
Well, the Nats have a shot at winning 3 out of 4 games at the Braves, and I don't think there's a Nats fan on the planet who would not have signed up for that going into this series. Game 4 for the Nats at the Braves, Thursday night, 7:20. Trevor Williams will be the Nats starting pitcher, as keep in mind the Nats are in the midst of one of these brutal stretches in which there is not a scheduled off day for a while. The Nats next scheduled off day not until Monday, June 10th. So you have this series at the Braves. Then a big series this weekend at one of the best teams in baseball, a 3-game set at the Cleveland Guardians. And then after that, a 3-game series at home against the reeling New York Mets. And then another 4 games against the Braves. These games at Nationals Park, June 6th through the 9th, and then finally will come that long-anticipated next scheduled off day for the Nats. I did want to mention this rather significant news for Washington, D.C. baseball, not necessarily Nationals baseball. So Major League Baseball on Wednesday officially launched the statistics of more than 2,300 Negro Leagues players into a newly integrated MLB.com database that presents 7 different Negro Leagues from 1920 through 1940 with what we have come to know, right? The long-standing American League and National League records. It was in December 2020 that MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred announced that MLB was, quote, correcting a long-time oversight in the game's history by officially elevating the Negro Leagues to Major League status, end quote. Well, MLB now has officially incorporated Negro League stats in MLB's official historical record. There was this committee that did a lot of work for this, the Negro League Statistical Review Committee. It's actually pretty interesting. A lot of people from different walks of life were on this committee, like CC Sabathia was on this committee. There was sabermetrics representation on this committee. There were people with great knowledge of the Negro Leagues, like our friend Bob Kendrick on this committee. But for our purposes as Washington, D.C. area people, we now have this. Josh Gibson now is MLB's all-time leader in multiple major categories. Josh Gibson, as many of you know, is perhaps the greatest player in Negro League's history. Heck, he's maybe the best baseball player ever, period. He played for the Homestead Grays over 9 seasons, 1937 through 1940 and 1942 through 1946. Now, the Homestead Grays played their games in both Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh, but the Grays are more closely associated with D.C. Gibson is a fascinating guy. He was a catcher, an outfielder, a first baseman, a third baseman, but he now is MLB's all-time leader in career regular season OPS 1,177, career regular season slugging percentage 718, and career regular season batting average 372. Now, there is a complexity to all of this. Negro League players, through, of course, no fault of their own, did not play many games. Like Josh Gibson never played in more than 69 games in a regular season. The current standard for career MLB leaders is 5,000 at-bats and 2,000 innings, which roughly equates to 10 full qualifying seasons. What was done for the Negro League stats, 1,800 at-bats, 600 innings, roughly the equivalent of 10 seasons worth of 60-game seasons. So when you talk about Gibson having these all-time rate stats, it is important to point out they came in far fewer plate appearances than people who played in the majors. Now, again, it's not his fault that he was in this circumstance, but that is the circumstance. So I think this is really interesting. There has never been a great solution as to what to do with Negro League stats and, Negro League players historically. I don't blame MLB for doing this, though. I think there is justification for doing this, and I do want to make this point for people who say that, this bastardizes MLB records. In 1969, a special committee on baseball records decided to recognize 6 major leagues dating back to 1876. The National League and American League, as everyone knows. But there also are these other leagues that existed for very short periods of time, a long time ago when things were highly sketchy. There is the American Association, 1882 through 1891, the Union Association, which existed in just 1884, the Players League, which existed in 1890, and the Federal League, which existed in 1914 and 1915. If you think that there aren't some screwy things with the American Association and the Union Association and the Players League and the Federal League in terms of stats and record keeping, think again. So to me, Negro League stats counting as MLB stats is understandable. And bottom line, from a Washington, D.C. perspective, Josh Gibson is now MLB's all-time leader in 3 major categories.
It is remarkable to consider. We interviewed Bob Kendrick a couple years ago on the podcast, and he gave some incredible insight into Josh Gibson's career. A lot of stuff I didn't quite realize or appreciate of just how good he was. And I think the important thing to keep in mind with this, yes, it's messy. Yes, it's not going to be precise. The record keeping back then, not just in the Negro Leagues, but in some of these other older leagues you're talking about, and even the early days of the National American Leagues, we don't know for certain how accurate that all was. We also know that you mentioned how few games they played. There are games that they also played as like barnstorming games and things that maybe didn't count as official and didn't show up in these official stats that, deserve to ultimately be counted the same way. We know the level of competition was really high. We know how many great players there were, and we know how many of them should have been in the major leagues playing alongside the greats from the American and the National League during those years. So what I would say to anybody who feels like somehow this isn't right, or it's somehow taking away from what Babe Ruth or Hank Aaron or others, accomplished during their time in the major leagues, what I would say is, with all stats from all eras, you have to think about the context of it. And I would say this applies to Barry Bonds. He hit the most home runs in Major League history. That's undisputed. He did that. Now, we also know that you have to view that in a certain context because of what he was also doing that probably helped him hit so many of them. But he still hit them. And so he deserves to be at the top of the record book. But in your mind, you say, okay, well, I know what else was going on, and so I have to view that with that understanding and how to compare that to other players. Just like the great pitchers of 1968, Bob Gibson's incredible season. Well, we know how good pitching was and how low offense was that year, and so you give it some of that context. The dead ball era, all of these things. So I think when you look at this, you're not trying to say, well, was Josh Gibson actually, owner of the highest OPS in history? I don't think that matters. I think the point is that he deserves to be in the conversation with all the other all-time greats. And it's not the end of the world if we do or don't know that his stats were as good or better or official or in any way, different than what the guys who played in the major leagues at the time were. He deserves to be recognized as one of the all-time greats, and this is a good way, I think, to do that. And one last point, when you're talking about those old leagues, here's all you need to know about that. The Atlanta Braves, who the Nationals are playing right now, fly a ton of pennants at their ballpark from the 1880s. And that's a team that was in Boston. I think they were called the Bean Eaters at the time. It's pre-National League. It is the precursor to this franchise that plays in Atlanta. But they fly pennants for teams that I think had the best record at the end of the 40-game Federal League season. And if that's good enough for the Atlanta Braves, then I think Negro League stats deserve to be right there alongside Major League stats.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. It's not just the Negro Leagues in which you had really short seasons and you have stats that can seem out of whack. From a D.C. perspective, we have such a unique baseball history, but it also is complicated because you think about the two different incarnations of the Senators. You have, of course, now the Nationals, and you also have the Homestead Grays, who didn't even play in D.C. exclusively, played in D.C. ultimately primarily, but like I said, split time between D.C. and Pittsburgh. So you have these four different major entities, none of which are connected. So it's such a hodgepodge of baseball history in D.C. that you try to cobble together and make sense of it. And, part of it is fun, because you can have conversations of who is the best player in Washington, D.C. baseball history. And I think that's a really compelling conversation because you can talk about Walter Johnson and you can talk about Josh Gibson and you can talk about Max Scherzer, etc. But yeah, it's odd. I can't think of another baseball market that has what we have in D.C. Four different major entities, none of which are connected. They're all independent of each other. And so, when we talk about Nats history, it's never really brought up in context with Senators history or Grays history. And yet all of it is part of D.C. baseball history.
Right. And, there was a point that I think Ryan Zimmerman became the all-time leader in home runs among Washington baseball players, surpassing the great Frank Howard. And he's not officially in this, but Josh Gibson is probably in that conversation as well. And maybe we now need to think of that in those terms. You're right. It's a very truly unique baseball history we have in this town. And I say embrace it. It makes us stand out from others. No other city that I know of has had three different franchises play here. And, two of them had the same name, and the third one has a name that technically the first one actually had at the beginning until they sort of gave that up and went to the Senators instead. It's okay. It's messy. It's all right to be messy. Appreciate it for what it is. and put it all into context. And I think that's the key to this all. We should recognize everybody who played across all these years and across all these different leagues. And it's great for debate. Was Josh Gibson better than Babe Ruth? That's a wonderful debate topic that nobody can truly know the answer to, but it is deserving of that debate. And I think moves like this help legitimize that debate.
And from a D.C. perspective, you can make the argument that D.C. has the best pitcher in baseball history in Walter Johnson and the best position player in baseball history in Josh Gibson. You can make that case. You tell us what you think. It's an interesting topic. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. Don't forget, we this season are offering shout-outs on the Nats Chat Podcast. Hit up Tim Shovers to find out more. That email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
A tragic and legendary figure, Josh Gibson was the greatest power hitter in black baseball, pounding out home runs with regularity, despite playing most of his career in two of the game's most cavernous ballparks, Forbes Field and Griffith Stadium. He utilized a fluid, compact swing to hit for both average and power, and tales of his mammoth home runs became legend. In 60 recorded at-bats against big league pitching, Gibson batted .426. He died just 3 months before the integration of baseball in the major leagues. Gibson was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1972.